The entire hall went silent like someone had pressed a mute button on the world. Damien stood frozen, his proud smile collapsing inch by inch as two boys sprinted across the polished floor and threw themselves into Evelyn's arms like they'd been searching for her their whole lives. "Mum!" they screamed together. Evelyn staggered slightly, clutching them close, her eyes filling as if the word had finally healed every wound Damien thought would never close. The crowd stared. Celine's hand flew to her pregnant belly as her face drained of color. Damien took one slow step forward, shaking his head like the scene was a nightmare. "No, no, that's not possible," he whispered, but it was possible, because the boys' faces were not just familiar. They were Damien's face, copied twice. Same eyes, same dimples, same mouth. And in that moment, Damien realized something terrifying. The woman he mocked as Barren was standing there as a mother, and the father he proudly claimed to be might have been living a lie. Now sit back, relax, and get comfortable, because what you're about to hear is not just a story of betrayal, mockery, and heartbreak. It's a story of a woman who was broken in the cruelest way, yet rose so high that the same people who laughed at her had no choice but to bow before her truth. Let's take it from the beginning. Evelyn married Damien with a heart full of softness and hope. Their tiny apartment felt like a palace because love lived in it. Damien had ambition that burned like a flame, and Evelyn loved how he spoke about tomorrow as if it was already theirs. Every morning, she ironed his shirts neatly, kissed his cheek, and watched him leave with confidence. At night, they ate simple meals and planned big dreams, laughing like the world couldn't touch them. "We'll build the kind of home people admire," Damien promised one evening, pulling her close. Evelyn smiled, resting her head against his chest. "As long as we're together, I'll survive anything," she replied. She truly believed it. She believed love was enough to soften hard seasons. 2 months after their wedding, Evelyn missed her period. She stared at the calendar like it owed her a miracle. Her hands shook as she counted days again and again, heart racing with wild joy. She imagined tiny socks drying on a clothesline, Damien's face glowing in disbelief, Marjorie finally smiling at her. When she told Damien, he lifted her and spun her around the room. "Are you serious?" he asked, eyes shining. "Evelyn, don't joke about this." She laughed through tears. "I'm not joking. I think it's happening." That night, they whispered baby names like secrets. But the next morning, the test strip showed one cruel line. Evelyn stared at it until her vision blurred. Damien's excitement drained into silence, and Evelyn held her stomach, whispering, "Maybe it's too early," even as her heart sank. Months passed, then more months, and Evelyn's optimism began to wear thin. At first, she comforted herself with logic. Some couples waited a year, even 2. But the silence of her womb started to feel loud. Every time she saw a toddler wobbling beside a mother, her chest tightened. Damien tried to be patient, yet his patience came in waves. Some weeks he was tender, joking about them, enjoying their freedom. Other weeks, he was distant, staring at his phone and answering her with short replies. Evelyn noticed it, but she kept telling herself it would pass. She kept cooking his favorite meals. She kept trying. She kept smiling even when fear grew teeth inside her. Then Marjorie's visits became frequent. At first, she came with gifts and fake warmth. Soon her tongue sharpened. During dinner, she would ask, "Evelyn, have you seen a doctor?" Then laugh lightly as if it was a harmless question. Damien's eyes would flick to Evelyn, waiting. Evelyn would force a smile. "Not yet, but we will," she'd say softly. Marjorie would sigh loudly. "Time is moving," she'd reply. One night she pushed her plate away and said plainly, "A home without a child is a house without a future." The words landed heavy on the table. Damien didn't defend Evelyn. He just stared at his food as if swallowing it was suddenly difficult. Evelyn's throat burned, but she nodded politely because humiliation had taught her how to sit still. Evelyn finally convinced Damien to go to the hospital. The day felt like stepping into a courtroom. She held Damien's hand in the waiting room, but he kept pulling away as if her touch annoyed him. When the doctor examined Evelyn and reviewed her tests, he smiled gently. "Your results look fine," he said. Evelyn's shoulders loosened for the first time in months. Then the doctor glanced at Damien. "I'd like you to do a few tests as well," he added. The atmosphere shifted. Damien's face tightened. Evelyn turned to him quickly, pleading silently. The doctor continued calmly. "Fertility is not only the woman's responsibility." Damien's chair scraped the floor as he stood abruptly. "Why would I test?" he snapped. "I don't have a womb." The doctor blinked, still composed. Evelyn's voice came out small, almost trembling. "It takes two people to make a baby," she said, trying to keep peace in the room. Damien laughed bitterly. "So now you want to drag me into your problem?" Evelyn's eyes filled. "It's not my problem, Damien. It's ours." He scoffed and turned toward the door. "Do whatever you want," he muttered. Then he walked out, leaving Evelyn sitting alone with the doctor's pity. The nurse offered Evelyn tissue. Evelyn accepted it with shaking fingers, hearing her own heartbeat louder than everything. After that hospital visit, Evelyn started to feel like a guest in her own marriage. Damien would leave early and return late, smelling like cologne and impatience. Sometimes he wouldn't eat her food. He'd stare at it and push it away as if it offended him. Evelyn started praying more, not because she suddenly became superstitious, but because prayer felt like the only place she could pour her fear without being punished. At night she knelt beside the bed silently while Damien faced the wall. The distance between them was not measured in inches anymore. It was measured in emotional hunger. Evelyn began fasting, not telling anyone, hoping sacrifice would force heaven to notice her. She learned to cry quietly. The bathroom became her private graveyard. She would run the tap, press her face into a towel, and let the sobs shake her like storms. Then she'd wipe her eyes and come out smiling, pretending she didn't just fall apart. One evening she tried to talk. "Damien, I feel lonely," she whispered. He didn't even look up from his phone. "Don't start," he replied. "I'm not trying to fight," she said quickly. I miss us." Damien finally looked at her, eyes cold. "Stop acting like a victim," he said. "Fix yourself." Evelyn flinched as if slapped. The words sank deep. That night, she stared at the ceiling, realizing something terrible. She could be in the same house with a man and still feel completely abandoned. Celine appeared like a polished shadow in Evelyn's life. Damien invited Evelyn to an office event, claiming it would be good for appearances. Evelyn wore her best dress, hoping it would spark something between them again. At the venue, Damien became charming in public, smiling widely, shaking hands like a man who owned the room. Evelyn followed beside him, trying to match his energy. Then Celine walked over, dressed elegantly, perfume trailing her like confidence. She greeted Damien with a bright laugh. "Damien, I didn't think you'd come," she said, touching his arm. Damien's smile looked too familiar. "I wouldn't miss it," he replied, voice warm. When Celine hugged him, the hug lasted just a little too long. Evelyn stood there with a stiff smile, feeling invisible. Celine finally turned toward her. "Oh, you must be Evelyn," she said, eyes scanning her like a silent judgment. Evelyn nodded politely. "Nice to meet you." Celine's smile was sharp. "Damien talks about you," she lied smoothly. The words felt fake. Evelyn tried to laugh. Damien quickly changed the subject, almost nervous. Later, Evelyn walked past a hallway and heard Damien's voice on the phone, low and intimate. "I miss you," he whispered. Evelyn froze as if her soul left her body. She backed away slowly, heart pounding, realizing the loneliness wasn't accidental anymore. It had a name, a face, and a scent. Marjorie became bold. She stopped pretending kindness and began treating Evelyn like a failed duty. Every visit came with a new insult wrapped in concern. She would enter the house and glance around as if searching for a baby that wasn't there. "Still quiet here," she'd say, smiling without warmth. She started counting the years aloud as if announcing a sentence. 1 year, 2 years, 3. Evelyn's stomach would twist every time. Marjorie began bringing strange fertility teas, forcing Evelyn to drink them. The smell alone made Evelyn gag. "Drink it," Marjorie insisted, "unless you like being empty." Evelyn drank to avoid conflict, but the tea made her sick, dizzy, weak. Damien watched and said nothing. One day Evelyn whispered to Damien in the kitchen, "This tea is making me unwell." Damien shrugged. "Then don't drink it," he replied, but his tone held no support. Evelyn stared at him. "She humiliates me," she said. Damien scoffed. "You want me to fight my mother because you can't do one simple thing?" Evelyn's eyes watered. "Having a baby isn't a switch I can turn on." Damien looked away. That evening Marjorie sat like a queen at the dinner table and announced loudly, "If you cannot produce a child, I will find someone who can." Evelyn's fork slipped from her fingers. The sound echoed. Damien didn't correct his mother. He didn't protect his wife. Evelyn realized she was losing the marriage slowly, not all at once, like someone bleeding quietly in a locked room. Evelyn tried one last time to pull Damien back into their love. She cooked his favorite meal, set the table neatly, even lit a candle. When Damien entered, he glanced at everything with boredom. Evelyn forced a smile. "I wanted tonight to feel like us again," she said softly. Damien sat, ate a few bites, then checked his phone. Evelyn's heart sank. "Can you just look at me?" she asked. Damien sighed heavily. "What now?" Evelyn swallowed hard. "I miss you. I miss us." Her voice cracked. Damien stared at her like she was annoying him. "You miss what?" he snapped. "A lie? We don't have a family." Evelyn's chest tightened as if something squeezed it. "Does that mean I'm nothing to you without a child?" she asked, trembling. Damien stood up abruptly. "Don't twist my words." Evelyn followed him, desperation spilling over. "Damien, is there someone else?" Silence, thick, heavy silence. Damien's refusal to answer felt like confession. Evelyn's tears fell freely now. "Please," she begged. "Just tell me." Damien turned slowly, eyes flat. "Stop embarrassing yourself," he said. Then he pushed past her. Later, while he showered, Evelyn gathered his clothes from the chair to wash them. Her fingers stopped when she saw it, lipstick stain on his collar. Evelyn's knees buckled. She sat on the floor clutching the shirt, sobbing like her body was breaking into pieces. Evelyn couldn't sleep after seeing the lipstick stain. Her mind replayed every late return, every cold look, every time Damien blamed her as if she chose infertility. The next day, she followed him quietly. Her hands shook on the steering wheel as she kept a safe distance behind his car. Damien drove into a neighborhood Evelyn didn't recognize, then parked near a restaurant. Evelyn pulled over across the street, chest pounding like a warning drum. She watched Damien step out, adjust his jacket, and smile, an expression Evelyn hadn't seen at home in years. Then Celine arrived in a sleek car. She walked toward Damien with confidence, like someone who had already won. They sat by the window, laughing. Celine leaned forward, touching Damien's hand. Damien didn't pull away. Evelyn's vision blurred from tears, but she forced herself to keep watching. Celine's hand slid along Damien's wrist, and Damien smiled like a foolish boy. Evelyn clenched her fists so hard her nails bit her skin. "Please." "No," she whispered to herself, but the worst came after they stepped outside. Damien pulled Celine close and kissed her in public, slow and sure. Evelyn's breath stopped. She covered her mouth to silence a sob. People walked past them casually, unaware that a marriage was dying across the street inside a woman's chest. Evelyn stayed frozen until Damien and Celine drove away. Then she cried in her car like someone mourning a funeral, because that's what it felt like. She was watching love get buried alive. Evelyn confronted Damien that night. She didn't scream at first. She simply waited until he sat down, then placed the lipstick-stained shirt in front of him like evidence. Damien stared at it, then looked up slowly. Evelyn's voice was low, shaking. "Is this Celine?" Damien didn't deny it. He leaned back, expression annoyed. "So you followed me," he said. Evelyn's eyes widened. "You're not even ashamed," she whispered. Damien shrugged. "Ashamed of what? Being human?" Evelyn's tears fell again. So my pain became your excuse? She asked. You watched me suffer, and you went to someone else. Damien's jaw tightened. You stopped being a wife the day you couldn't give me a child, he spat. Evelyn staggered back like the words hit her physically. I didn't choose this, she cried. Damien stood, pointing a finger at her as if she was the one cheating. I needed a future, he snapped. I needed a family. You couldn't provide it. Evelyn wiped her face, shaking. You never even tested, she reminded him. You refused. You blamed me alone. Damien scoffed. Because I'm not the problem. Evelyn looked at him with disbelief. You don't know that, she said. Damien stepped closer, voice cold. If you want peace, accept your failure, he said slowly. Accept that some women are not meant to be mothers. Evelyn felt something break inside her, not just heartbreak, but dignity. In that moment, she realized Damien didn't just stop loving her. He had started enjoying her pain. The divorce papers arrived on a random afternoon, like cruelty dressed as routine. Evelyn held the envelope with shaking hands, rereading the words until they blurred. Damien came home later, calm, almost smug. Evelyn stood in front of him holding the papers like a wounded child holding a knife. Damien, you filed for divorce? She whispered. Damien loosened his tie and nodded as if confirming a delivery. It's done, he said. Evelyn's body trembled. Why? She asked, voice cracking. Damien's eyes hardened. I'm tired, he replied. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of excuses. Evelyn dropped to her knees before she could stop herself. Please, she begged, don't do this. Damien looked down at her with disgust, as if her tears were ugly. Evelyn clutched his leg. I stood by you when you had nothing, she cried. I believed in you when you doubted yourself. Damien pulled his leg free sharply. And now I'm returning the favor by freeing you, he said coldly. Evelyn stared up at him, stunned. Freeing me? She echoed. Damien grabbed his bag. You'll sign, he said. Don't make it messy. Evelyn's mouth opened, but no sound came. Damien walked past her like she was furniture. The door shut. Evelyn remained on the floor, staring at the papers. Then her body finally gave in. She collapsed fully, sobbing into the carpet like someone whose heart had been ripped out with bare hands. For the first time, she realized love could become a weapon in the wrong hands. Evelyn moved out quietly. The first night in her tiny rented room felt unreal, like she had been thrown out of her own life. The walls were bare, the mattress thin, the air heavy with loneliness. She kept hearing Damien's voice in her head, accept your failure, like a curse. Outside, people acted normal, but Evelyn felt exposed. Some neighbors stared too long when she walked past. In the market, she heard women whispering. That's her. The one he left because she couldn't have kids. Each word carved into her deeper. Evelyn stopped eating properly. She lost weight so quickly her clothes hung loosely. Her face became hollow, her eyes permanently tired. One day she passed a baby store and froze. Tiny clothes hung behind glass, soft and innocent. Evelyn stared until tears filled her eyes. She imagined how her child might have looked. She imagined tiny hands gripping her finger. She pressed her palm against the glass, then quickly pulled back like it burned. A young mother inside laughed while choosing baby socks. Evelyn turned away, breathing hard. She stumbled back to her room and sat on the floor. I can't stay here, she whispered. Every corner knows my shame. She called her only remaining contact, a distant acquaintance, and asked about work elsewhere. That night, she packed her small bag with trembling hands. If I stay, she told herself, I will die slowly. By morning, she left the city behind without looking back. The new town didn't welcome Evelyn with warmth. It welcomed her with survival. She found a dishwashing job at a small restaurant, standing for hours until her back ached. The manager barked orders like she was disposable. Her hands cracked from detergent, and at night she soaked them in warm water, biting her lip to stop crying. When the dishwashing job ended suddenly, Evelyn took cleaning work in offices. She scrubbed floors while wearing old shoes that pinched her toes. Co-workers mocked her gentle voice and quiet nature. One woman sneered, You look like somebody who lost everything. Evelyn paused, gripping her mop tightly. I did, she replied quietly, but I'm still breathing. Some nights, Evelyn lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if her life was punishment. She remembered how Damien used to look at her like she was his world. Now she was just a tired woman in a small room, counting coins, counting disappointments. One afternoon, after cleaning nonstop, her vision went blurry. She tried to stand straight, but her knees shook. A coworker laughed. Don't faint here, we're not nurses, she said. Evelyn's ears rang. The room spun. She took one step and collapsed onto the floor. Voices became distant. When she opened her eyes later, she was on a bench outside, breathing weakly. Her boss stood over her, annoyed. If you can't handle work, don't come back, he said. Evelyn nodded silently, swallowing humiliation with her pride. She went home, shaking, broke, exhausted, but still alive. Evelyn sat on the edge of her bed for hours, listening to the silence of her tiny room. Her body still felt weak from fainting, but the deeper ache was the fear that she was sinking into a life she couldn't crawl out of. The next morning she forced herself outside to look for work again, even though her feet felt heavy. On her way back, rain began to fall suddenly, soaking her clothes and hair. She stood under a narrow shade, shivering, hugging herself like a child. That was when a calm voice spoke behind her. You'll catch a cold standing out here, the woman said. Evelyn turned and saw an older woman holding an umbrella and a paper bag. Her face looked firm but kind, like life had tested her too. Come inside for a minute, she added gently. The woman introduced herself as Harriet, the owner of a small bakery nearby. The warmth inside smelled like sugar and comfort, and it almost broke Evelyn again because she hadn't felt safe in a long time. Harriet handed her tea and watched her quietly. You look like someone who hasn't had rest in months, Harriet said. Evelyn tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. I'm just going through something, she admitted. Harriet nodded as if she already knew. Everybody is, she replied. After a pause, she asked, Can you work? Evelyn swallowed hard. I can do anything, she said. Harriet studied her and finally said, Then come tomorrow. You can help me here. Not forever, just until you find your feet. Evelyn's eyes filled. Why are you helping me? Harriet answered simply, Because pain doesn't end you. It trains you. Working in Harriet's bakery didn't erase Evelyn's sadness, but it gave her something her heart had been starving for, purpose. Harriet taught her slowly, like someone watering a dying plant. Evelyn learned how to knead dough without rushing, how to measure ingredients precisely, how to decorate pastries so they looked like love. Sometimes Harriet caught Evelyn staring into space and would tap her shoulder. Come back, she'd say softly. You're here now, Evelyn tried. Some evenings, after closing, she would sit in the back room staring at her hands, amazed she could still create something beautiful while feeling broken. When customers complimented the pastries, Evelyn smiled politely, but inside she trembled because praise felt unfamiliar after years of blame. Harriet watched her quietly, like she understood every silent wound. One afternoon, Harriet handed Evelyn a small envelope. This is yours, she said. Evelyn frowned. For what? Harriet raised an eyebrow. For work, she replied. Evelyn opened it and froze. It wasn't much, but it was honest money earned by her hands, not pity, not shame. Evelyn's throat tightened. Tears spilled before she could stop them. I used to dream of babies, she whispered, voice shaking. Now I'm dreaming of survival. Harriet moved closer, squeezing her shoulder. Survival is the first miracle, she said. Later that day, a woman who bought pastries for her office returned with excitement. Who made these? She asked. Harriet pointed at Evelyn. The woman smiled. I plan events. I need someone like you. Can you handle large orders? Evelyn stared, stunned, as if life was offering her a new door. Harriet whispered, Say yes. Evelyn said yes, and that single word became the seed of her comeback. The first large order terrified her. She barely slept the night before, checking the oven repeatedly, her heart racing every time a timer beeped. Harriet stood beside her like a shield, correcting her gently when she panicked. "You're shaking," Harriet said quietly. "Breathe. You're not dying. You're learning." Evelyn managed the order, and when the client praised the pastries, something inside Evelyn loosened. She didn't feel healed, but she felt capable. Slowly, her confidence grew in small steps. Harriet encouraged her to take photos and post them online. "Let people see what you can do," she insisted. Evelyn didn't want attention at first, but she obeyed. Orders began coming. Not many, but enough to show her she wasn't invisible anymore. Eventually, Evelyn rented a small kitchen space and hired a young assistant. She felt guilty the first day she gave someone instructions, like she didn't deserve authority. But Harriet reminded her, "You didn't steal this. You earned it." Still, the trauma didn't disappear. Some nights Evelyn woke up sweating, hearing Damien's voice in her head, feeling the old shame crawl back into her chest. When she couldn't sleep, she would sit on the floor and whisper, "I am not what he called me." One evening, an email arrived, an invitation to supply pastries at an elite event in her former city. Evelyn's breath stopped. Her stomach twisted. She stared at the location and felt fear gripping her throat. Harriet noticed. "What is it?" Evelyn whispered. "It's back there." Harriet's voice was calm. "Then it's time you return, not as a victim." The drive back to the city felt like traveling into a wound that never fully closed. Evelyn kept both hands tight on the steering wheel as familiar streets surfaced like ghosts. Every corner triggered a memory. Laughing with Damien before things fell apart, walking beside him holding dreams, begging him to stay. She tried to focus on her delivery list, her schedule, her professionalism, but her heart didn't care about plans. It cared about pain. She arrived early at the venue, carrying boxes with her assistant. The hall was grand, bright, filled with expensive voices. Evelyn kept her head down, forcing herself to move with confidence. "You can do this," she whispered. But when she stepped outside for air, her breath caught because she saw something that made her body go cold. Damien's company name on a banner. Evelyn nearly dropped the box in her hands. Her assistant frowned. "Are you okay?" Evelyn forced a nod. "I'm fine," she lead. Her legs felt weak. Her chest felt tight. She wanted to run. She even reached for her phone to call Harriet. Harriet picked up immediately. "Are you there?" she asked. Evelyn's voice trembled. "His name is on the guest list," Evelyn whispered. There was silence for a moment. Then Harriet spoke firmly. "Listen to me. You will not shrink today. You will not hide. You will do your job and leave with your head high." Evelyn swallowed hard. "What if he sees me?" Harriet's answer was quiet but powerful. "Then let him see what he threw away. Let him feel it." Evelyn ended the call, wiped her face, and walked back inside, terrified but standing. It happened faster than Evelyn expected. She was arranging pastries when laughter drifted through the hall, loud and confident, and her body stiffened before she even saw the source. When she turned, she saw Damien across the room, older, richer looking, dressed like a man who had convinced himself he was untouchable. And beside him stood Celine, glowing, heavily pregnant, dressed in a way that made her belly look like a crown. Damien's hand rested on Celine's waist with pride, like he enjoyed showing the world proof of his victory. Evelyn's throat tightened. She didn't even realize she was holding her breath until her assistant whispered, "That couple is staring." Evelyn forced herself to continue working, but her hands began shaking slightly. Celine leaned toward Damien and whispered something, then laughed like she was mocking an invisible enemy. Damien laughed too. That laughter pierced Evelyn like a blade. She kept her eyes down, but she could feel them moving closer. Then Damien's voice hit her ears like a slap. "Evelyn," he said, loud enough to draw attention. Evelyn lifted her head slowly and met his eyes. His brows rose in surprise, not because he cared, but because he couldn't believe she looked composed. Celine's smile sharpened as she studied Evelyn from head to toe. "So it's really you," Damien said, stepping closer. Evelyn's lips parted, but no words came. Celine tilted her head and smiled. Well, she said slowly, this is interesting. Evelyn's heartbeat thundered. She sensed it. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a stage. Damien wasted no time. He looked around the hall dramatically, then looked back at Evelyn with a smirk. So this is what your life became, he said, voice dripping arrogance. Working with flour, carrying trays. Evelyn held the table edge to steady herself. She wanted to speak, but she refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. I have work to do, she replied quietly. Damien laughed. Work, he repeated loudly. You mean survival. Celine stepped closer, resting her hand on her belly with deliberate pride. Some women were made for motherhood, she said smoothly, eyes locked on Evelyn. Some were made to just manage. Evelyn's throat burned. Damien leaned in slightly and whispered with poison. So you're still barren, right? Still praying for what heaven refused to give you. Evelyn's fingers curled into her palm, nails biting her skin. She swallowed hard and answered with calmness she didn't feel. I'm not here for this, she said. Celine laughed softly. Oh, don't be sensitive. It's not our fault life chose me, she said, rubbing her belly. Damien's smile widened, as if Celine's cruelty turned him on. Evelyn looked at their faces and realized something. These were not people capable of mercy. Her hands trembled as she reached for the pastry box. She turned away without replying. Behind her, she heard Damien murmur, "Look at her pride," still acting important. Evelyn kept walking, but when she reached the kitchen area, her legs nearly collapsed. She pressed her back against the wall, fighting tears. She refused to cry there, but her hands shook like the pain was alive. That night, Evelyn barely made it to her room before she broke. The moment the door closed, she slid down to the floor and sobbed like she had been holding her breath for years. It wasn't only about Damien's mockery. It was everything, being blamed, being discarded, being treated like a defective object. She screamed into her pillow, muffling the sound, because even now she felt ashamed of her pain. When she finally got enough strength, she called Harriet. The moment Harriet heard her shaky breathing, she asked gently, "Did you see him?" Evelyn couldn't speak at first. Then she whispered, "He laughed at me. He called me Barren like it was entertainment." Harriet's voice turned firm. "Listen, don't let them rent space in your head," she warned. "They already stole enough years. Don't give them tonight, too." Evelyn wiped her face and tried to breathe. "I thought I was strong," she confessed, "but I still feel small when I see him." Harriet replied softly, "Strength isn't pretending you're not hurt. Strength is surviving the hurt without letting it own you." After the call, Evelyn sat on the bed staring at her ceiling. Her phone buzzed unexpectedly. It was a voicemail from an old clinic in her former city. Evelyn froze as she listened. "Hello, Evelyn," the receptionist said. "We've been trying to reach you. Your file shows incomplete follow-up regarding fertility evaluation. Your doctor asked that you come in to discuss what was found." Evelyn's stomach tightened. She hadn't thought about those old appointments in years. She had been too busy surviving. But now it felt urgent. Her hands shook as she saved the number. And for the first time in a long time, Evelyn felt something other than pain. She felt suspicion. A quiet thought whispered, "What if the truth was bigger than her shame?" Evelyn went to the clinic the next morning with trembling steps. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and old memories. She sat with her hands clasped tightly, heart racing. When the doctor called her name, Evelyn stood slowly, feeling like she was walking into the past. The doctor was older now, but his eyes were the same, calm and observant. He reviewed her file, flipping through papers. "Evelyn," he said gently, "I remember you. You came here years ago with your husband." Evelyn nodded silently, throat tight. The doctor sighed. "Your results were normal," he said, tapping the file. "But there was an issue. Your husband refused testing, and that prevented us from giving you complete answers." Evelyn's lips parted. "So I wasn't the problem," she whispered. The doctor's face softened with pity. Infertility isn't a blame game, he said carefully. But based on the observations and what was reported then, your husband likely had fertility issues. Evelyn's entire body went cold. It felt like someone turned the room upside down. She remembered Damien's refusal, his anger, his cruelty. Suddenly it wasn't pride anymore, it was fear. Evelyn whispered, "He knew?" The doctor hesitated. "He may have suspected," he admitted. Evelyn's eyes filled. She wasn't crying from sadness now. She was crying from rage and relief mixed together. Years of humiliation rushed through her veins. The doctor continued, "Evelyn, I want you to understand something. Motherhood is still possible for you." Evelyn covered her mouth as tears spilled. She walked out of the clinic shaking, whispering to herself. He blamed me, to hide himself. And that thought ignited something dangerous. Evelyn wasn't just healing anymore, she was waking up. Evelyn didn't rush her next step. She moved carefully, like someone walking across thin ice. She returned to Harriet and told her everything. Harriet sat quietly, absorbing the words, then whispered, "I knew he was lying, but I didn't know it was this deep." Evelyn's hands trembled. "He humiliated me," she said. "They destroyed my name." Harriet held her hands. "Then let your future correct your past," Harriet said gently. It took months before Evelyn finally made a private choice. She would pursue motherhood on her own terms. Not for revenge, not to prove anything, but to take back what life had delayed. The process was slow, emotional, and frightening. Evelyn often cried in the bathroom before appointments, whispering prayers into her palms. Then came the day of the test. Evelyn sat alone on the edge of her bed, staring at the stick in her hand. Her body shook violently. "Please," she whispered, tears already falling. "Please, don't break my heart again." When the 2 lines appeared, she couldn't breathe. She laughed and cried at once, covering her mouth so her sobs wouldn't become screams. She collapsed to her knees, whispering, "Thank you, thank you." A week later, at the scan, she lay on the bed while the nurse moved the device gently. Evelyn held her breath. Then she heard it, one heartbeat, then another. Her eyes widened. "2," she whispered. The nurse smiled. "2," she confirmed. Evelyn broke down again, clutching her chest as if her heart couldn't contain the miracle. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt chosen. Evelyn hid her pregnancy like a secret treasure. She didn't announce it. She didn't post it. She didn't even tell distant friends. She treated the pregnancy with quiet caution, like a fragile glass she couldn't risk dropping. Every week she checked. Every month she prayed harder. Harriet stayed close, almost protective. "You will not stress yourself," Harriet warned. No heavy work, no carrying, no stubborn pride. Evelyn tried to obey, but it was hard. She had built her business with her own hands and didn't want to lose control. Still, fear forced her to slow down. She hired more help. She delegated. At night, she placed her hands on her belly and whispered, "Stay with me. Please stay." Sometimes she woke up sweating from nightmares, dreams where Damien mocked her again, dreams where she lost everything. When the delivery day finally came, it felt unreal. Evelyn cried through labor, not only from pain, but from the overwhelming emotion of finally arriving at a place she thought she'd never reach. Harriet held her hand tightly, whispering, "You're doing it. You're doing it." When the first baby's cry filled the room, Evelyn's world blurred. Then the second cry followed, just as strong. The nurse placed the babies on her chest. Evelyn stared at the 2 tiny faces as if she was seeing heaven. Her lips trembled. "My boys," she whispered. "My babies," Harriet sobbed openly beside her. Evelyn kissed their heads gently, tears dropping onto their soft skin. In that moment, revenge didn't matter. Pride didn't matter. Only love did. Evelyn had crossed the desert and found water. Motherhood changed Evelyn completely, but not in the way people romanticized. It wasn't easy. It was sleepless nights, constant worry, exhaustion that made her bones ache. But even when she was tired, she felt full. Her boys grew into calm, bright children with gentle hearts. They followed Evelyn around the house like she was their son. They loved sitting beside her while she worked on designs. They called her Mum like it was the safest word in the world. Evelyn used to cry quietly when they weren't looking. Sometimes she would watch them sleep and whisper, "I waited years for you." Harriet became their grandmother in every way. She brought them small gifts, read bedtime stories, and scolded Evelyn when she tried to do too much. "You suffered enough," Harriet would say. "Let life be kind to you now." But life still demanded a price. Harriet's health began to fail slowly. At first it was minor fatigue, weak steps, short breath. Then it became real. One evening Harriet sat in Evelyn's kitchen and said gently, "I don't want you to panic." Evelyn froze. "What are you saying?" Harriet smiled sadly. "I'm not leaving yet," she reassured her. "But I need you ready when the time comes." Evelyn shook her head violently. "No," she whispered. "I can't lose you too." Harriet touched her cheek. "You won't lose me," she said softly. "I will live in everything you became." When Harriet passed later, it wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, peaceful. Evelyn cried until her chest hurt. And when she found Harriet's letter, her hands shook as she opened it, already knowing it would destroy her. Years later, Evelyn attended a formal event in her former city as a respected businesswoman. She wasn't the shaky woman carrying shame anymore. She walked into that hall with calm grace, her boys dressed neatly beside her. They were old enough now to understand manners, but young enough to still hold her hand proudly. Evelyn had no idea Damien would be there until she saw him. Damien looked older too, still arrogant, still dressed in confidence. Celine was beside him again, pregnant once more, glowing as if pregnancy had become her identity. When Damien noticed Evelyn, his eyes narrowed with disbelief. Celine whispered something and laughed, rubbing her belly. Damien approached with that same cruel smile Evelyn remembered. "Evelyn," he said loudly, "still alone?" "Still waiting for a miracle." Evelyn stared at him calmly. "I stopped waiting," she replied. "I started living." Damien scoffed. "Look at you acting important," he mocked. Celine stepped forward. "Some people move on," she said, voice sweet but sharp. "Others just pretend." Evelyn didn't respond. Her boys squeezed her hands, sensing tension. Damien's eyes dropped to their faces for a second. Then he laughed. "Are those someone else's kids?" he asked mockingly. Evelyn's expression didn't change. "They're mine," she said simply. Damien's smile faltered slightly, but Celine quickly laughed louder. "Please," Celine said. "You? A mother?" The cruelty in her tone made Evelyn's chest tighten, but she held her ground. She had survived worse. Damien leaned closer, voice low. "You can't fool anyone," he muttered. Evelyn stared back, unshaken. Then, in the distance, the boys suddenly pulled away from Evelyn and ran forward towards someone they recognized. Their faces brightened with pure joy. Evelyn turned sharply, confused, until she saw who they were running toward. The hall went quiet as the two boys ran straight back to Evelyn and wrapped their arms around her waist, tightly, laughing and shouting at once. "Mum!" they screamed. "Mum, we found you." People turned to look, drawn by the innocence and excitement. Evelyn smiled gently, smoothing their hair. "I'm here," she whispered, holding them close. Damien froze. His mouth opened slightly as his eyes locked onto the boys' faces. It was like watching a man get hit by truth without warning. His smile collapsed. His breath caught. Celine's laughter faded instantly, replaced by a stiff, uneasy stare. Damien stepped forward slowly, staring harder. "That's," he whispered. His voice trembled. "That's not possible." Evelyn lifted her head and met his eyes, calm and steady. "It's possible," she replied, "because you were never brave enough to face the truth." Damien's hands shook. He looked from Evelyn to the boys again, horror rising in his face as recognition settled deep. The same eyes, the same mouth shape, the same dimples he saw in the mirror every morning. Celine's hand tightened around her belly as her face drained of color. Damien whispered, "Evelyn, who are they?" Evelyn's voice was gentle but deadly. "My sons," she said, "the blessing you mocked." Damien swallowed hard. "But how?" Evelyn took a slow breath. You refused testing because you were afraid, she said. You blamed me to hide yourself. Damien's knees wobbled slightly. Then Evelyn delivered the final twist, looking at Celine. And since you love mockery so much, she added calmly, you should know something else. Her pregnancy isn't yours either. Celine's eyes widened in panic. Damien's face twisted in shock and humiliation. Around them, whispers spread like wildfire. Evelyn held her boy's hands and walked away, fulfilled, healed, and victorious, while Damien stood in the ruins of his own cruelty. The hall stayed noisy long after Evelyn walked away. Whispers turned into full conversations, and conversations turned into judgment. Damien stood in the same spot like his feet had been nailed to the floor. His face was pale, his lips parted, but no words came out with meaning. Celine tried to recover first. She forced a laugh that sounded sharp and wrong, then clutched Damien's arm. "This is ridiculous," she hissed under her breath. "Say something. Defend us." But Damien couldn't move past the boys' faces. It wasn't just resemblance, it was certainty. He stumbled after Evelyn like a man chasing oxygen. "Evelyn," he called, voice cracking. She stopped only when her sons held her hands tighter. Damien's eyes were wet now, humiliatingly wet. "Please, talk to me," he begged. Evelyn looked at him with a quiet, tired calm. "Now you want a conversation," she said, "after you spent years speaking cruelty." Celine followed quickly, panic written all over her. She kept rubbing her belly as if it could protect her from the truth. "Don't listen to her," she snapped at Damien. "She's just trying to poison your mind." But Damien turned sharply, rage rising like fire. "Poison my mind?" he repeated, shaking. "You trapped me." Celine's eyes widened. "I didn't trap you. I gave you a family," she shouted. Damien's laugh broke into something bitter. "A family that isn't mine," he said. Celine's face crumbled. She tried to speak, but her voice failed. At the edge of the hall, Evelyn lowered herself to her son's level and kissed their foreheads gently. "We're going home," she whispered. As they walked away, Damien fell into a chair like a man defeated. He had mocked the wrong woman, and now the life he built on pride was collapsing, while Evelyn's life, built on pain and resilience, finally stood complete.